All right, Dennis Rodman, he's in Singapore, so all should be well. Take a look. You're welcome.
You know, it could have been more aggressive. Trump could have said something different. Kim Jong-un could have said something different. But I think that it's fair to say that both of them want to see where this meeting is going to go. So it should go fairly well. But people should not expect so much for the first time. So open, like I said, the door's open.
So what progress could we see? Dennis Rodman is hopeful. Are others? Let's ask CRTV host Allie Stuckey, campusreform.org media director Cabot Phillips, and New Blue Interactive CEO Taryn Rosenkranz. Welcome to all of you. Allie, to you first. Dennis Rodman is optimistic, but he's just cautious. Is that about the right posture to take?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if Dennis Rodman is necessarily an expert on this, but I do think that accurately reflects how most of us think. Even if you love President Trump or if you hate President Trump, I think we have a reason to be a little bit cautious, not just because we're talking about negotiating with a tyrannical regime, but also because President Trump has said that he is going to wing this, that he is going to go off script. He's going to be able to walk in and just feel whether or not this is going to be a good deal. There's reason for criticism, but it's cautious optimism as well. Of course, all of us want denuclearization no matter what side of the aisle that we're on.
Cabot, your thoughts?
Welcome to 2018, where Dennis Rodman probably has more insight into these negotiations than anyone else commenting on the issue outside of the government. That's just kind of the world we live in at this point. But it is sad to see.
He made more sense in that exchange than many diplomats do, I digress. But.
This is true, and it's been interesting to see the lead up, kind of how both sides are tempering expectations. And one thing that has been particularly noticeable on the left is the amount of people that seem to be hoping President Trump is going to fail in these negotiations. And I think that they don't just want him to fail. Many of them need him to fail at this point because of their credibility is on the line. They've been saying for really a year or two now that President Trump was going to fail and that his rhetoric was not going to work. And on the verge of a major peace agreement, that entire narrative will be flipped on its head. And I think for any American to hope for failure at this point, it's counterintuitive. If President Trump fails to garner peace, or really fails in any regard, it hurts all Americans. So I think we should all be hoping for the best here, and it's been kind of concerning to see the way that many people have not been.
Well, I mean, history is replete with parties in the opposition, sort of second-guessing the peace talks that are going on with the party in power. But having said that, Taryn, do you think there's a sort of a zeal on the left to see this all go kablooey?
Absolutely not. I think that's absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, when it comes to peace talks and denuclearization, these are things we've been talking about for years. There is nothing more important to every American. And I would say, particularly on the left, they're no different than anyone else. We are all Americans. And the safety and security of our country is always first most at the forefront of everyone's minds. There's caution about how he's handling this, which is different than rooting for him to fail. Nobody has said, nobody has said, I'm rooting for him to fail. I want peace.
I just wanted you to clarify, and you did. So, Allie, all I'm just saying here is the questioning that has come up, and it's come up from a number of Republicans, although not nearly as many, is that the president's going on a hunch and a thought, and the idea of sizing someone up within the first minute could be risky, and that they're worried about the way he's going into this. Now, it would not be the first time people are worried going into talks about how they'll proceed. There was cynicism around the Reagan-Gorbachev talks. There was a lot of cynicism around the JFK, Nikita Khrushchev talks. So this is not a first. But what do you make of just those concerns? The president might not be ready.
I mean, of course, I have those concerns. Like I said, I think people on both sides of the aisle probably have those concerns. But at the same time, traditional approaches haven't worked in the past. So maybe this is the kind of new dynamic approach that we need. Who knows? I mean, he's kind of not President Trump, but Kim Jong-un is kind of a precocious leader. There's not really anything that we can expect going into this deal. The best thing that we can hope for is that President Trump is successful, whether or not we like his tactics going into it. The best we can hope for is that denuclearization actually is accomplished.
Well, that's one of the goals. I just don't know in the limited time they have, unless they extend it, Cabot. I might miss something that they do just that. What we can expect out of this and what will be deemed a success. I always think it's very good to have leaders talking because it beats the alternative. But would you be wanting to see, is there a hope that we see follow-up talks or that this is a continuation of a trend?
I don't think we should necessarily expect to see some huge breakthrough here. I think hopefully this would be the start of an ongoing series of discussions, and rather than feeling rushed and feeling like they have to get a deal done just for the sake of getting a deal, I think ideally from a diplomatic perspective you would like to see them take their time and kind of iron out the details over time. But ultimately you got to think of the big picture. Whatever deal is issued, it's going to have to be something where there's follow through. It can't be like Iran where there's zero follow through and we just take them at their word. I think when it comes to North Korea, I like your former guest was saying, trust but verify. We're going to need to not just take them at their word, but continue these negotiations and whatever outcome comes about.
Taryn, what's remarkable when I look at the history of major historic agreements or talks, there's very little oomph that the party in power got from them, whether it's Jimmy Carter and Democrats in 1978 with the Camp David Accords. That was a big deal. Or even the success George Bush Sr. had, kicking Iraq out of Kuwait, didn't last very long. So I guess what I'm saying is, do we overplay the political impact of these events?
Yeah, I think that actually November's election is still a long way away, even though we feel like it's kind of quickly approaching. And certainly 2020 is even longer than that. So I'm not sure what kind of boost or even what kind of deficit something not working out well here would have. And so I think that's part of the reason why I don't think people are rooting for failure in any way, shape, or form, because I'm not sure that it's really going to have as much impact. The real impact is on the safety and security of Americans if we can push forward and really have, as the ambassador, your previous guest, the ambassador said, an ironclad agreement that's really going to have something that we can follow through and know that we are going to, work real steps towards denuclearization. So I don't think the political blow up, good or bad, is going to be something that can last all the way to November and certainly all the way to 2020.
All right, guys, I want to thank you all very, very much.